Welcome to More Than Legal, the show where we go behind the scenes to uncover the fine print of power, purpose, and profit. I'm your host, attorney Danielle Laughlin. After almost 2 decades in the trenches of courtrooms and boardrooms, I have learned that every move leaves a mark and every deal tells a story. What will we uncover today? Let's find out. Hey, real quick, before we dive into the episode, remember, nothing you hear on this podcast is intended to be legal, financial, or tax advice. I invite you to contact any of the guests you hear by looking in the show notes for their contact information, or if you'd like to reach out to me, you can find my contact information at daniellelaughlin.com. All right, now let's get into it. Hey, welcome back to More Than Legal. I'm your host, Danielle Laughlin, and I am really excited to share Cesar Perez's story with you today. I'm going to let him tell you how we met and kind of how he showed up here on the show. But unlike some of our more traditional conversations, today's conversation is going to be all about resilience. And Cesar is a perfect person to talk about resilience because his journey has been truly life-changing. And he's going to share with you what that means and why he's here today to talk with you. And towards the end of the show, we're going to give you more information about how you can follow his journey and learn more than what you hear today. So, Cesar, thank you so much for coming today. Please just start with, who you are and kind of why we're here and what, you want to share with the audience today. And then we'll talk more about kind of your story.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. It's been quite a journey. I am a musician, actor, editor, producer, and now a published author, which kind of brings me to my story basically. And now the director of this documentary right now that's based on my memoir, Chase the Light: The Gruesome Art of Becoming Unbreakable. Because that name is a little too long, we just named the documentary Chase the Light, and it's my journey, from where I was at the top when my accident happened, and then how to rebuild yourself with the broken pieces, mending them with love, patience, and hope.
Yes, I love it. And when we met, it was really kind of happenstance. We were at an event, and you started to share with me kind of really your accident, kind
Mm.
of your long, long, long journey
Yeah.
to even be standing in that room with me that night. And I feel that in entrepreneurship, everybody comes with their own, history, and not it's not always pretty. And what I think you really have a unique gift for is showing that even in some of the toughest, most challenging situations of life, you can chase the light and you can still look to the good of humanity. And so that is really the incredible impact that you had on me in like about 10 minutes. So I'm excited to see everything that you're doing. Let's start first with, you had some great success and you mentioned an accident. So why don't we just kind of anchor into um, pre-accident, right? And then kind of who you were then, and then what happened to you that sort of changed the trajectory of your life.
Yeah. Well, no, but going back to how we met, you just have a very welcoming persona, and I had been out of the industry for about 5 years during my recovery, so I knew getting back into it was going to be a journey in itself. So I just felt really open to you, be able to speak to you about my story. Which brings me back to your question. Yeah, my story begins. Obviously, I'm an immigrant. I'm a Salvadoran immigrant, so my parents always taught me to do the best you can to earn your right to live here. And so that's what I did. I try to break that lens through which Latinos, people from El Salvador mostly, are viewed as like we're just delinquents coming to the US. And so like I try to break that stigma throughout my whole career, my whole life. And I every decision I made was with a purpose, and I knew that I wanted to be in the entertainment industry, whether it be behind the camera or in front of the camera. I didn't care. I was passionate about storytelling. and I wanted to bring those stories to life, whether it be part of the whole creative process from designing to shooting to the post production. I just wanted to be involved. And so every decision I took, throughout my career was towards that goal. And so once I graduated from college, I submitted my resume to all different places, different studios that were being built, and hoping for the best, right? Like not sure what to expect, but hoping for the best and just trying to make sure to get my foot in the door. And eventually I got hired to be the senior designer for a movie. And then the casting director, when they saw me, he's like, "You'd be perfect for this role. Would you mind auditioning for it?" I didn't think anything of it. I was like, I want to help tell the story. I kind of have read some of the script already because I was the designer. And so I was like, yeah, send me the sides. I'll do it. And then 2 weeks later, he tells me, "You beat everybody out in LA. The role is yours." So if you roll the credits on Beast of Burden, I'm on there twice as Pablo, one of the bad guys, and then as the in the art department as the designer. So I think that's kind of like what propelled me into the industry even more. And so I got an agent and I landed several other roles, one with Clint Eastwood. Well, he was the director, but on 1517 to Paris, being Spencer's friend, one of the main characters. And so I was happy. I was at the top of my game, where I thought like, this is where I'm working towards my goal. I had gotten a good job at Cox Media Group to be their designer and motion editor. And so I was like, everything I had worked so hard for in my life is coming to fruition, like I'm good. And I was dating a girl at the time that I felt everything was leading to where I wanted it to be. And then I decided to drive on Martin Luther King weekend down to Savannah to go see my family, stop by to see my girlfriend. And a drunk driver driving westbound on eastbound lanes hit me head on, going 76 miles an hour, I believe. And then a semi truck hit me head on as well, going 70 miles an hour. I died on scene several times, and then again at the hospital. I don't remember the accident per se. Like I remember just a big white light, and that's it. Like there's 2 weeks of my life that I don't remember. And it took a while for me to even acknowledge everything that had happened. I think that was kind of like the biggest hurdle for me, just accepting, and that's kind of like what rocked my world and made me have to relearn how to live again. I often say if life had a reset button, somehow I pressed it that night, not willingly, right? But it's life.
Well, it's incredible because again, I mean, like you said, you had everything. You had everything you wanted. How old were you when
I
that happened?
just turned 24.
24,
Uh,
right? The world is your oyster. You're very innocently just going to visit family.
mm,
And this happens to you, and it happens by somebody who made some really poor life choices, right?
right.
And so there's a component of that too where we chatted briefly about that, and I would love to talk a little bit about that. So the accident, of course, is horrific, and we have a lot of Georgia listeners. I'm in Georgia, we're in Georgia
Right.
together, but yeah, that's a pretty dark highway, right? It's getting from basically Atlanta, Macon out to Savannah. It's a pretty dark highway out there. And there aren't a lot of really like stops really, and so it's incredible that this guy was just out there at that speed going in the wrong direction
Yeah.
and was oblivious to that,
Yeah.
and so and there was nothing really that you could have done in a situation like that because that is something drivers aren't really trained to expect. So it truly was, um forgive my phraseology, but like a freak accident, right? I mean, that just is a totally random thing. And then the semi truck, right? I mean, oh, and 24, I've got kids that are 19 and 18 now, 17, too, three kids that are driving out there. And it's like, even at 24, I tell my kids, you're still my baby,
Yeah.
right? So, and so there's a family component to this story as
Yeah.
well, which I think is amazing. So this happens to you, and as you said, you literally had to learn to relive your life, and you technically died on the scene. Tell us a little bit about that. I mean, you have written your manuscript on this. Do you talk about that experience, and was there anything about that life and death experience that did stick with you? I know you said you didn't really understand or remember much of the accident.
Yeah.
Was there any process there? I've heard some things about kind of those near death experiences, or the kind of coming and then like leaving and kind of
Yeah.
coming back. Did you have anything like that?
No, and I've been asked several times about that. And I've personally gone back and I'm like, did I remember? Am I missing something? For the longest time, I wanted to recall those 2 weeks that I don't remember, like the accident after that bright light. Trying to remember, did I have an out of body experience? Did I see my life flash before my eyes or stuff like that? I'd be lying to you if I said I did, because I don't remember. And after a while, I was like, I'm okay not remembering, like, because I can drive without that trauma, without that fear of, oh man, like someone's gonna hit me. Like when I first got in the car, I was a little anxious. I was like, is that gonna come back to me? Like when I'm driving down. And for the longest time, I couldn't drive I-16 because I was like, not by myself, because I was like, if I'm there and I go past that place again, am I gonna have that flashback? Am I gonna have that
Yeah.
trauma? And so I was kind of scared, to drive down that time or down that road again. But I did it several times after and nothing. So I can't tell you I personally had an out of body experience or anything like that. But just the journey and the whole experience of going through that recovery did give me a different perspective on life, that I still carry with me to this day, just appreciative of the little things and just, holding on to the ones you love, really.
100%. And you went back to your dream eventually too.
Yeah.
And that's like where you are today, and doing your own thing, right? And that's what we love here. Of course, I'm an entrepreneur. I work
Yeah.
with entrepreneurs and producers, filmmakers, creators. And so let's go to you're in recovery now. You realize what's happening. Um you have a strong faith. You're a very just naturally optimistic person, from what I could kind of glean from you. And I think that's probably where we kind of shared a
Yeah.
kindred spirit of optimism and hope, as you said.
Mhm.
So you mentioned to me that you, in fact, had gone to eventually, and this is great for you to kind of clarify on your timeline here, but you eventually had gone to the driver and tried to speak with him and even help him, if I
Yeah.
recall. Tell
Yeah.
us about that.
Yeah, so and this is where it's ironic, and that's why I felt like I had to publish my memoir and just tell my story, because there's just so many things that happen in such an ironic way, that you're like, there's no way this happened. This is crazy. Because obviously my girlfriend left me, after the accident. So obviously
Mm.
I was heartbroken after that. I felt like two trucks hit me again. And then it turns out the drunk driver is from the same place I was born in El Salvador. So it's like irony on top of irony, So like, how much can one man take, right? Like, it's not like it would have made a difference if he had been African American, white, or whatever, but it just kind of poured salt on the wound, knowing that I had lived my whole life trying to break that lens through which they view us, And then this guy comes here and just ruins my whole life, because the whole reason
Mm.
we immigrated was to avoid the pain, the suffering. And now here my mom was like watching her own son, her only son, on his potential deathbed. So I was so angry. Honestly, I don't know what came over me, but I reached out to the judge that was overseeing the criminal case, because they sent me a mail. They were like, "Hey, you're required. You're not required, but you are in this criminal trial, so you can be a part of it." And so I was like, I reached out to him and I was like, can I record it? Number one, because at the time I didn't trust myself. I was like, if I see this guy, I don't know what I'm gonna do. So I was like, if it's on camera, I know I'm not gonna do anything stupid. And then secondly, I was like, I had started writing, so I was like, maybe I can help people with, my interaction with this guy. Maybe I'll actually learn to forgive, And it wasn't just for me, because my mom, she was also dealing a lot with that, just unable to forgive, And so when we showed up My dad, he was the one that was filming, and the guy agreed to see me, and so his lawyer that was assigned to him told me that he was willing to talk to me, and so they took us to a little conference room in the courthouse, and it was so weird watching him walk in. You know, he was my height, the same. We both had kind of long hair at the time, but it was my height, my skin color, you know. And then he was a little bit older, but he sat right in front of me, and he spoke Spanish to me and my mom, and like all that is in the documentary, and it still breaks me to see my mom. You know, like she pulls out images from her purse, you know, of me before the accident, and she's like, "How can you give me that back? You can't," you know. And as she's crying, and so like that still breaks me because it's true, you know. I'm her only son, and all she's ever asked of life, God, and everything was just for her family to be safe and just to be close together. And all of that was kind of falling apart during that time. So it was very emotional and heartbreaking to go through that. But all that to say, at the end, they did the criminal trial, and then he was sentenced, I believe, to 8 years. And then we walked out of the criminal trial. Me and my mom and my dad were just walking down the steps, and I didn't feel like justice was served, right? Because nothing could give me my life back, but I did feel a little bit alleviated and a little bit lighter because he saw me walk in. He saw me that I hadn't turned to drugs, alcohol to ruin, you know, my life, and that had been my choice, you know. And so he had a choice to make, and he unfortunately did the wrong one. But I was like, no, me and my family, we are different. You can't paint everyone with the same brush. Like just because he made his choice doesn't mean I'm gonna follow in that step. So it kind of made me feel a little bit lighter, you know, that I had made my choice and I was cool. I was fine. You know, it's time to move forward. And so it was kind of like closing that chapter for me.
Yeah, it's truly incredible that you were willing to speak with him, that your mother was willing to speak with him. You know, working in the legal industry, I actually have done some indigent defense work
Mhm.
very briefly when I first started my practice. And I come from, you know, not to make this about me, but just a little bit of kind of context here. I also grew up very poor. And so I really have a deep appreciation for what you're saying about trying to rise above. And one of the things that really struck me the most about your story is that even in my own family and community, that addiction and poverty and alcohol and drugs and all of those things are mixed together. And I was around that as a kid. I saw that as a kid. And it was a personal journey of mine to also try to rise above that and say, you know, just because I'm an immigrant or just because I came from this situation doesn't mean that I have to be this stereotype that people would expect. And so um, I also really appreciate too that you brought the camera with you, which shows such a deep connection to storytelling. And you knew, you said if the camera was there, I knew that I wouldn't act crazy or so that right. Those are my words.
Yeah,
But talk about that. Talk about that because you had been behind the camera, or you know, behind the
yeah,
scenes, I should say, you know, as a designer and things. And then you've also been an actor, and of course, you have a part in your production here. But what is it about the camera that you felt would anchor you into not turning it into something more uh, maybe personally vindicating,
yeah.
but maybe not the person you really wanted to be?
Yeah, well, I knew that if the camera was on me, I was like, there's gonna be evidence everywhere, you know. So it's like it gives you kind of like a little pause, you know. It's like don't do anything stupid. And then I thought because I was so angry when I walked into that criminal trial. I was just so angry. I was like, if I see him, I don't know what I'm gonna do, like literally. And then, but it's crazy how life plays out and how your brain works. Because as soon as saw him walk in, like all that anger just washed away, and it was just sadness. Like in the documentary, like you can see me like tearing up and crying. Like I don't know, seeing him walk in, like I was like, that could have been me. That could be me, you know, like because we're both from the same place, you know, stuff like that. But it was just sadness. Like how did this guy ruin my life? You know, we're from the same place, and it was just just sad. And that's why my mom spoke, because I think I was choked up, and so she had to go ahead and speak. So it was weird because I was so angry, but then all that just fell apart, and it's on video. So
Well, and I think too, it kind of gets to, there is a duality of life. I mean, we all have good and bad parts of ourselves, and we're all a choice away, and so I think it also kind of highlights the human aspect of that, because you were angry, but also we're all just people.
yeah,
And I can imagine that, even though this guy clearly has some challenges and made a really bad choice, and I think understanding what you said is he really didn't turn away from that lifestyle,
yeah,
unfortunately. And so, but there's always a redemption, right? And so I think, as any true storyteller knows, there is a possibility of redemption. And so I feel like that response from you is just the empathy that you have as a storyteller, and the complexity of a character, right? A character is a human, right? Well, maybe not all, but
yeah,
in that case. And so I think that that just comes from your empathy, as a storyteller. And I find it fascinating too, because your mom didn't struggle, she didn't struggle. And so there, to me, that just sort of goes to uh you being who you are and why you are so effective in your work,
mhm,
right? Because there's a sensitivity
yeah.
there in that story. So you get past this, and well, you get past this trial.
Mhm.
Now, how long did you have to go through this recovery period?
I'd say it was about 5 years altogether, because I was in and out of hospitals, going through surgeries, procedures. I was getting every type of therapy you can imagine, because my femur was protruding out of my leg. So that was the big major surgery the first time, or the first major surgery. And then I had to have several facial reconstructions, like that were spaced out because, again, COVID happened during that time. So a lot of my procedures got pushed back, which also leads me to the point of kind of like the theme in my book and the documentary. Like, it's just controlling what you can control, right? Like, there was oftentimes where I was like, let me just get this surgery done. Like, I want it now, so I could stop being in that spot where I was, right? Like, I wanted to kind of decrease the time that I needed to be in this spot of recovery, but I couldn't do it because the hospitals were either packed or full with COVID patients, that were either dying or potentially dying. And so instead of like being angry, I was focusing on like, well, they need their beds because these patients are actually dying. I'm thankfully stable, so I was grateful that I didn't have to be there. But at the same time, I was like, if I can't control the surgery procedure, I can at least control my body. So I started working out. I started getting up every morning, and trying to run a little bit more, and just to basically strengthen my whole body so that when the time did come for my procedure, I'd be able to recover quicker. And thankfully, that whole mentality and that whole process really helped me recover as fast as I did. I mean, like, people, when they see me, they're like, there's no way that all you went through all that, until they see the scars. And then they're like, well, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, that's incredible too. And there were so many opportunities for you to give up, right? And for you to just and I think that that is, I think every human has thought about, what if that was me? What would I do? What would I do in that situation? You you really did have a foresight and a fortitude, I think, that is rare, and is unique. And I think that that is one of the reasons that you were already successful as a young adult, and why you're going to continue to be successful in your journey, because of that fortitude and the resilience, right? So so you go through all of this. When did you realize that this was a story that it was probably always in your mind a story worth telling, but when did you realize that it was a story that you actually wanted to be telling?
Yeah. Honestly, I give all the credit to my mom. She was my therapist, my surgeon, my not my surgeon, but my doctor, my psychologist throughout this whole process. Like she was the one I'd go to when I needed help. And I mean, she basically had a newborn kid. Like she had to teach me how to walk. I had to learn how to go to the bathroom by myself. As embarrassing as it sounds, I couldn't even tie my shoe without needing her help. I had to learn how to breathe again. So it was it was very eye opening. Like she was the person that brought me to this world. And she was the one that was going to help me out of this hole that I was in right now. And so she's the one I give credit to for everything. She's the one that started telling me to start journaling, thinking that it would kind of heal my broken soul, in some way. I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think it would help, but I started doing it because at the time I couldn't do much of anything. My whole right side was pretty much paralyzed, or my right arm was paralyzed. And so I started typing with my left hand, especially after my girlfriend left. I was just like journaling. And at first, it was just me complaining, venting, complaining about life, everything that had happened. But eventually, I did see that the emotions were a little bit more controlled and I wouldn't cry as much, And so that's when I started realizing that maybe there is some healing in here happening. And so once I had written like almost 200 or something pages, I was like, I reread it and I realized that there was a story in there that I think could help others that are going through a difficult moment realize that despite whatever they may be going through, like there's still a reason to hold on for one more day. And I think that's the whole theme, the whole purpose of the book, the documentary, because I did want to give up a few times, like I was like, I don't want life if this is how it's going to be, especially after I realized what had happened and I saw myself in the mirror. I was like, this isn't me. This isn't my life. I didn't ask for this. And so it's just getting through that dark phase, realizing that every night does have to end and you just got to hold on for one more day because despite whatever trauma you may be going through, life can still be beautiful, And so I remember walking out of Shepherd Center, struggling because I was barely able to walk. But I told my mom, with tears in my eyes, that I was going to get everything back that was taken from me. And she's like, I know you will, and I'll be there with you every step of the way, And so it couldn't be more true. She's never left my side. She's always been my biggest supporter. And so that's why I'm taking her to my film festival in June. She's going to be my plus one. I wouldn't
Oh,
want anybody
great.
else. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I mean, especially I am a mom, so I'm
Right.
like, absolutely, there's nothing I wouldn't do for my children, and um, the fact that she really encouraged you to journal, which is great advice for
Mhm.
anybody, but also especially going through really dark times. And I love too that you kind of have this manuscript, and from this manuscript, you realize there is a story, and so now you've produced this story that or at least a part of it, and
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe there's more to come. If you're willing to share a little bit about that. So when did you publish your manuscript?
I published it in June or July. I forget the date. It's been about 3, 4 years now since it's been out. But I knew from the very beginning, I knew the book was just the stepping stone. What I really wanted to do, especially after I saw all the video, all the footage that my parents and my family had taken of me throughout my recovery process and all the surgeries, procedures. That's when it kind of hit me. I was like, there's no way I went through all that, right? But there is all this video, all this footage that I'm like, no, I did go through that. So even to me, it was pretty extraordinary, that I went through all that. So I was like, I know it's a story worth telling. After I saw that, and so that became kind of like my main goal. I was like, the memoir, the book was only the first step. I really wanted to show everybody, everything that I went through, because I do my best with words to describe everything I went through, but um, it still doesn't do it justice as much as actually visually seeing the pain that my family, my sisters, my dad, my mom were going through, I was going through. And then also I went back and interviewed the EMS crew, the first responders that took me out of the vehicle. And they were just like, it's a miracle to even see you walk in. Like none of us thought you were gonna make it. That's why we got in touch with your sisters, because we were really moved at the time, by your struggle. Because he's like, you were fighting everybody off. I'm like, I don't remember, like I don't remember anything. And they're like, yeah, we've never seen that much fight in somebody. So we really wanted to know what happened with you, and so that's why we stayed in touch. So afterwards, after I could walk again, I went back and interviewed them, and that archival footage is also in the documentary, because they're my heroes, and I was a complete stranger to them. They were strangers to me, but they came together and, rescued an immigrant, so I think that also is part of the theme within the documentary.
I love this. There's so many important messages that you've shared with us today. Um, let's let's kind of bring this home for everybody. So one of the things that this show is all about is really like, real talk, really like you show up to your job, everybody's doing cool things, doing a bunch of cool things. But behind that, we are again going back to that common theme of humanity. We are all living in a story. It's our own story, it's our own journey. And when somebody can open up to share that, especially in an intimate way through something very difficult and dark, I think it allows us as humans to remember that the clothes that we wear and the color, like you said, the color of our skin and where we come from is not what matters. What matters is being there for each other. And and again, like you said, after the night comes the day,
Yeah.
right? The way we look at day and night is day first and then night, but actually it's really the other way around, right? Midnight is the height of darkness. That
Yeah.
starts our day, and our day brightens, right? And so I love that kind of metaphor for really kind of your journey too, which is like you were in a dark place, but now you're in the light and you're sharing this really powerful story. It's an incredible story. Great work, not just from what you compiled together, but great work by your family of just documenting it. And they were likely doing it for you, I imagine, like so you could see what had been occurring, since you were, I assume, comatose during that period of time. And then thereafter, when you probably couldn't really film yourself even though you were aware.
Yeah.
So so this is great because I think it shows the real importance of having a network and a support system,
100%.
right? Which is definitely something that we also encourage with our clients and the audience. As you know, people that listen to the show are leaders,
Right.
and leadership is lonely. And there's nothing more lonely than relearning life, right? Like that's a very lonely place. So I feel that your story has so much power for so many people who are trying to push through some tough times. How can folks see the documentary, find your book, find you? I know you gave us some links that we're going to share, but where would you like for them to go first?
Yeah, that link has all the festivals that the documentary has been submitted, that's going to be screening at, and then also where you can get the book on Amazon. Obviously, that'd probably be the easiest way. And then also there's my Instagram, my personal Instagram, which you can follow, Cesar_Perez Fit, FIT. I made that way back, so no judgment there. And then Chase the Light, I think 2026 is what my documentary page is dedicated to. Because sometimes I post, just funny stuff on my personal page. But if you really want inspirational, motivational stuff, then Chase the Light 2026 is the page you want to follow. Because, like I said, you mentioned it. It's a lonely road. Obviously, the whole recovery and the leadership, because nobody's gonna walk that road but you. You have to put all that effort, all that work. And if I hadn't done it, even as much as my parents love me, as much as my family loves me, like I wouldn't be where I was if I hadn't taken that audacity to do it on my own. To wake up every morning, go try to run a 5K, go try to lift my right arm as much as I could, knowing well that maybe I could, maybe I couldn't, right? But at the end of the day, it's not going to be because I didn't try. And I think that's the whole purpose of this documentary, the whole purpose of this memoir. Just go at it, give it your best shot. You don't want to say, hey, it didn't happen because I didn't try.
Absolutely. And that is such an entrepreneurial spirit as well,
Yeah.
just to get out there and try. So I am so glad that you came today. And I do like I always do, where I try to pronounce names accurately, and then you're like, it's Caesar, and I'm like, oh yeah.
Either way, nah, either way. I've gone by, honestly, only like my family calls me Cesar. Everyone else has called me Caesar my whole life. So either way.
I do that with our team, Marcel too.
Yeah.
And he's like, Marshall's fine.
Marshall's. Yeah, I'll answer to you.
Well, I love it. I absolutely love it. And I appreciate that you came today to share your story with us. I know I'll be seeing you. I know you're hitting the festival circuit. We wish you all the best with that. I think that you're going to impact a lot of lives, and it's just really incredible. Do you have any parting words or like, you know, tidbits of advice that you might leave with our audience today?
Yeah, I mean, the title of the documentary is called "Chase the Light," and I think it's always been a metaphor. It's same thing with the cover of my book. It was me throwing away the crutches. It's a silhouette, though. You know, most memoirs have the cover of that person, right? Like their face and everything. And I was like, I don't want it to be that because my story could be anyone's. You know, like it can.
Mm,
My two trucks to the face can be your recent unemployment, your recent illness, whatever struggle you may be going through. Like there's still a reason to hold on for one more day and chase that light, chase your goals. Like after my recovery or after I got discharged from the hospital, my goals were miles away. And not just to my goals that were before the accident, but just to the person I was yesterday, you know? And so that it was overwhelming. But if I took it step by step, I was like, no, you know what? Tomorrow I'm gonna just wake up and try to walk and run a little bit further. Like if you your goals, if you take them by little small chunks, they become more feasible and your mind recognizes that. And so that's my tidbit of advice, you know, spice it up into like little small chunks that become more attainable. And then you'll see the progress, you know, because sometimes I didn't see the progress, but I knew it was happening within me. You know, sometimes I was like, oh, I don't feel like I'm getting stronger, but I just couldn't visually see it at the time, you know?
absolutely. That is great advice. Thank you so much. Everyone, thank you for taking time today to listen to this amazing story. You can find Cesar's links, and please check out the documentary, share it,
Yeah.
and pick up his book. I know I will be. I think that fundamentally we all are on our own journey, but one day at a time, one piece at a time is the best that we can all do. And I appreciate that you can say that today, even though some of the things you had to do are unimaginable. And so it has truly been a pleasure to learn more about your story. And I look forward to seeing all the great things that will happen for you and all those people that you are going to impact. I know you've deeply impacted me, and I'm so grateful for that. So thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you.
All right, everybody, be sure to check us out for the next show. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to the show. Remember, stay sharp, stay curious, and stay tuned for our next episode. Bye for now.